There's this very specific, almost comforting story we like to tell ourselves about human progress.
Oh, right. Like the whole upward ladder concept.
Yeah, exactly. We picture it as this straight, predictable line that's just always pointing upward, like a ladder we've been climbing for millennia.
Right. The idea that we started out in these dark caves, just terrified of thunderstorms and wild animals.
Exactly. And then, we discovered fire, we invented the wheel, we learned to harness electricity, split the atom. And now, we're literally carrying supercomputers in our pockets.
Supercomputers that can access, the entirety of human knowledge in a fraction of a second.
Right. And it's a very clean narrative. It makes us feel really secure because it tells us that with every passing generation, we are becoming fundamentally smarter.
More rational.
Yeah, more rational, more evolved.
It's the triumphant march of human intellect, essentially. We desperately want to believe that we are in a constant state of moving away from primitive ignorance. Right. And we think we're just marching toward this ultimate state of rational enlightenment. It's really the core assumption of modern society.
It is, but when you actually stop and look at the philosophical and sociological notes we are exploring for today's deep dive, that straight upward ladder suddenly looks more like a bizarre, twisted loop.
Oh, absolutely. It completely folds in on itself.
Yeah, because we're diving into a psychological landscape today that is just completely inverted. We are going to examine how the exact same brilliant, highly evolved human mind that can confidently decode the human genome.
Or casually debate the origins of the entire universe.
Right. How that exact same mind is somehow simultaneously completely defenseless.
Defenseless and honestly, often blindly arrogant about it.
Right.
What we are exploring today in these notes is arguably the absolute definition of a cognitive blind spot.
A massive blind spot.
Yeah, it's this glaring contradiction in the human condition that we rarely ever want to talk about because it forces us to question the very foundation of what we even consider intelligence.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking you on a journey through the ultimate paradox of human intellect. The notes we're using today are titled The Divine Mirror, Human Ego, Commerce, and Scientific Folly.
And it is a fascinating stack of documents.
It really is. We are going to explore how the exact same human ego that originally took a formless, infinite energy and gave it a human face.
And then built vast, multi-billion-dollar religious economies around that face.
Exactly. How that is the exact same ego that is now causing our absolute brightest, most educated scientific minds to fall victim to, teenage cybercriminals.
And my role here today is to help bridge those massive gaps for you. We're going to connect the dots between ancient philosophy, like the very psychological origins of how humanity conceptualizes a deity.
Which is super fascinating on its own.
Right. And we'll connect that to hypermodern problems like global cyber fraud. Because when you strip away the smartphones, the Wi-Fi, and the AI deepfakes, you realize something profound. That human psychology, our primal fears, our ego, our need for control, and our underlying greed has remained entirely unchanged across thousands of years.
It's just the same operating system running on new hardware.
That is exactly it.
Okay, so I want to start at the absolute foundation of this puzzle, the most fundamental question that humanity has ever wrestled with, and it's basically the starting point of our journey today in the source material.
The big one.
Yeah, the big one. Did God create humans, or did humans create God?
It is the ultimate chicken and egg scenario of existence, isn't it?
It really is.
And to really grapple with this, we have to contrast two very distinct, almost violently opposed views on the origins of everything. On one hand, you have the deeply religious and spiritual perspective.
Okay.
In this framework, the supreme power, the ultimate God, is entirely unborn, eternal, and completely self-existent.
Meaning it wasn't made by anything else.
Right. This entity, or this energy, exists fundamentally outside the constraints of time and space.
I want to pause on that for a second because it is a really difficult concept to actually visualize. We are talking about the first cause argument in philosophy, right?
Yeah, the prime mover.
Right. The idea that if you look at the universe, everything operates on cause and effect. A tree grows because a seed was planted.
And the seed exists because another tree dropped it.
Exactly. So if you trace that chain of cause and effect backward through time, the logical mind demands a starting point. Like there has to be an original cause that kicked off the entire chain reaction.
But which itself was never caused by anything else.
Right. An uncaused cause.
Exactly. And within that massive abstract theological framework, human religions have assigned specific roles to different manifestations of that power so we can, actually understand it better.
Break it down into manageable pieces.
Yeah, exactly. For example, if you look in Hindu belief, you have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva.
Okay.
They are given specific portfolios, so to speak, of creating, preserving, and destroying the universe. But the fundamental underlying supreme power, the Brahman, the ultimate God, is entirely formless, invisible, and unborn.
Pure energy.
Pure energy. That is the spiritual baseline. But then you contrast that with the scientific and logical baseline.
Which, for the modern mind, usually leads us straight to the Big Bang.
Right.
Science looks at the exact same universe, the exact same chain of cause and effect, and says the beginning wasn't a conscious entity, it was a natural phenomenon.
Just a massive, unimaginable expansion from a singularity.
Right. There wasn't some eternal being sitting in a void making a deliberate choice to create. There was just the spontaneous, violent unfolding of physics and mathematics.
Precisely. Science is completely obsessed with finding a mechanical how, while religion is obsessed with positing an eternal who.
Right, the how versus the who.
But where this exploration in our notes gets genuinely fascinating is when we move past that initial debate. Because as the ancient spiritual texts themselves claim, this supreme energy is unborn, formless, invisible.
Without a body.
Right, without a body, without color, and without any physical boundary. How in the world did we end up with millions of statues, paintings, and idols that look exactly like us?
Yes. This is where the human ego enters the chat, big time. There's this brilliant observation from the ancient Greek philosopher Xenophanes, who was talking about this around 2,500 years ago.
Oh, I love this quote.
It's so good. He looked around at the Greek gods, Zeus, Apollo, Athena, who all looked like highly attractive, powerful Greek humans, and he pointed out the sheer arrogance of it.
The narcissism.
Right. He basically said, if horses and oxen had hands and could create art, horses would draw gods that look exactly like horses, and oxen would draw gods that look exactly like oxen.
It is a devastating critique of human exceptionalism. I mean, it perfectly encapsulates the psychological concept of anthropomorphism.
Where we project our own human qualities onto the divine.
Exactly. We are projecting our own faces, our own emotions, our own anger, and our own physical limbs onto a supreme energy that, by definition, doesn't possess any biological traits whatsoever.
Because humans consider ourselves the absolute pinnacle of evolution, right?
Yeah.
The most intelligent beings in the room. So we naturally assume that the supreme power of the universe must share our quote-unquote best image, the human form.
Right. It's supreme, so it must look like me.
Exactly. But okay, let's unpack this. I actually have to challenge Xenophanes a bit here based on the notes. Is creating a human-like idol truly just pure, unchecked human arrogance?
That's the big question.
Are we just that narcissistic? Or is there a deeper cognitive necessity at play here? Because honestly, trying to wrap your human brain around a formless, infinite void of energy is impossible.
It really is.
It is like trying to visualize a new primary color. The brain just short circuits. You can't do it.
That is a very fair pushback. And it's a tension that ancient philosophers were actually acutely aware of. It isn't entirely rooted in narcissism. It's heavily rooted in cognitive limitation.
Right. Our brains literally can't handle the infinite.
Exactly. The human brain is an organ evolved to process the physical world. We process threats we can see, food we can touch, patterns we can recognize.
Survival stuff.
Yeah. So when you ask that biological organ to sit down and meditate on an abstract, non-physical, boundless concept like infinite formless energy, it struggles immensely. We need a bridge. We need a psychological tool to anchor our focus.
And the notes give a really helpful analogy for this. Think about a map of a country.
Right. The map.
A map is obviously not the actual terrain. You can't farm the paper the map is printed on. You can't build a house on the contour lines. And a blue line on the paper isn't going to quench your thirst.
Because it's not a real river.
Exactly. But we deeply respect the map, and we use it because it helps our limited perspective understand the vast reality of the actual country.
That is the exact mechanism of the idol in its purest original intent. The idol, the statue, or the painting was never supposed to be the ultimate God itself.
It was just a map.
Exactly. It was simply a means, a medium, to remind the human mind of the ultimate God. It's a focal point for concentration. And if you read the ancient texts carefully, they were remarkably self-aware about this metaphorical nature.
Really? How
But
so?
when an ancient scripture describes a deity as having thousands of hands, the primitive interpretation is to imagine this terrifying biological monstrosity with 1,000 literal physical limbs branching off a giant torso.
Which, frankly, sounds more like a sci-fi horror movie than a divine being.
It really does.
Yeah.
But symbolically, almost mathematically, it represents an omnipresent power.
Okay, I see.
It is a visual metaphor trying to convey that this divine energy is working everywhere, simultaneously, in all places at once, intervening in countless lives at the exact same millisecond.
So the hands are just a human metaphor for action and reach.
Exactly. Because that is how we as humans understand interacting with the world. We use our hands.
Right. And it wasn't just human faces we projected either. If we look across global history, humanity also honored the broader natural world by creating deities with mixed forms or entirely animal forms.
Right, which shows a different kind of reverence.
Yeah, you look at Hanuman or Ganesha in Hinduism, or the ancient Egyptian pantheon with the heads of jackals, crocodiles, and falcons. To me, that shows an acknowledgement that this underlying, unmanifested energy permeates all of nature, not just the human species.
We use the animal kingdom as another map,
Exactly.
and it demonstrates a deep, ancient reverence for the environment. The shapes they gave the divine were born from human imagination, designed to pay respect to the various facets of the physical world they relied upon. The idol was truly a tool for spiritual elevation.
But, and this is the massive pivot in human history we have to talk about. This is where the story gets pretty dark.
Yeah, things take a turn.
If we can agree that the idol was originally just a map, a symbol designed to help us focus our minds on a higher, selfless spiritual plane, how did we go from deep, meditative spiritual focus to, essentially, a toll booth?
That is the question, isn't it?
Like, how did humanity make the psychological leap from sitting silently in front of a statue to contemplate the infinite, to sliding a $20 bill under the statue to guarantee a promotion at work, or a cure for a sickness?
That is the tragic psychological deterioration of the spiritual process. It is the complete collapse of the ideal state into the practical, mundane state.
Tell me more about that ideal state.
Well, in the ideal state, the one outlined in profound philosophical texts like the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita, the ultimate goal is to use the physical idol to eventually transcend the physical idol.
Use the map to find the destination and then throw away the map.
Exactly. Once you arrive at the realization of formless energy, you no longer need the map. But the practical reality of human nature. The average human being fundamentally recoils from that level of hard spiritual work.
Because true spiritual work is agonizing. It requires immense self-reflection, analyzing your own flaws, accepting responsibility for your actions, seeking karmic balance.
It takes a lifetime of painful internal auditing.
And humans, by our very nature, seek the path of least resistance, always.
Always. So instead of doing the internal work to reach enlightenment, humanity took the physical idol and repurposed it entirely. We demoted the concept of God from a universal energy to a local officer or a cosmic moneylender.
Wow. A cosmic moneylend. This is what the notes refer to as the vow culture, right?
Precisely, the vow culture, the culture of making conditional deals with the divine.
Like, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you.
Exactly. If you solve my worldly problem, if you heal my leg, if you destroy my enemy, I will give you this much gold, or I will sacrifice this animal, or I will light this many candles.
We took the ultimate medium of spiritual liberation and transformed it into a transactional kiosk.
We really did.
Yeah.
And if you think about the psychology behind it, it makes a sad kind of sense. It is practically impossible to negotiate a business deal with an invisible, formless entity.
Right. You can't hand a bribe to the concept of the universe.
No, you need a physical representative. You need a manager sitting at a desk. So we use these physical idols to negotiate our two most primal driving instincts.
Right.
Fear and greed.
Right. When we are deeply insecure about our health, our financial stability, our children's futures, the abstract idea of karmic balance isn't comforting at all.
We don't want balance, we want a guarantee.
Exactly. We want a physical contract. We run to the physical idol because we want that guarantee.
And you have to look at the macroeconomic result of that psychological need. Because humans demanded a transactional God, we inadvertently birthed an entirely new, massive economic system.
The institutionalization of religion.
Precisely. Over the centuries, religion evolved from a solitary spiritual pursuit into a sprawling global economy. Think about the market that exists solely around temples, megachurches, mosques, and shrines.
It's staggering. You have millions upon millions of people whose entire earthly livelihoods depend entirely on this human need for divine transaction.
You've got the priests, the clerics, the artisans sculpting the idols, the farmers growing the specific flowers for offerings.
The entire infrastructure of religious tourism, the hotels, the transport, it is a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise built strictly on the human desire to negotiate with the unknown.
And to really understand the mechanics of this, it helps to view it through the lens of thinkers like Karl Marx, which the notes bring up.
Marx had a lot to say about this.
He did. Marx famously observed the societal function of religion and argued that it was frequently utilized and encouraged by the wealthy and the powerful to manage the masses.
Because if you can turn raw, unpredictable spiritual yearning into a highly structured transactional system with specific rules and fees, you create an incredibly effective mechanism for social control.
Exactly. Because if the masses believe that their suffering in this life is just a test, and that if they pay their tithes and obey the religious authorities, they will get a reward in the afterlife.
They are far less likely to rebel against the ruling class in the present moment.
Precisely. It manages desires, it pacifies anger, and simultaneously expands the trade and wealth of the institutions managing the transaction. The spiritual marketplace isn't some accidental byproduct of faith. It's a highly functional, highly optimized economic and social control mechanism.
I am curious, though. Surely throughout history, people noticed this grift. Like, it couldn't have just been a unanimous surrender to the marketplace.
Oh, absolutely not. History is punctuated by brilliant, fearless rebels who saw exactly what was happening. Individuals who realized that humanity had taken the awe-inspiring concept of God and downgraded it into a corporate business model.
Who are we talking about here?
Well, if you look at figures in India, for example, like Kabir, Guru Nanak, or the very Sufi saints, they were vehemently, fiercely opposed to this.
They were basically the whistleblowers of the spiritual economy.
That is a perfect way to describe them. They were trying to wake humanity up from the transactional illusion.
I want to share a quote from Kabir here from the source material because his critique of this system was just so blunt and so brilliantly logical. He was attacking the hypocrisy of idol worship and the blind business of devotion.
This is such a powerful quote.
He said, "If worshiping stones finds God, I would worship a mountain. Better is a grinding stone which grinds flour for the world to eat."
I mean, that is just a devastating, grounded critique.
It really is.
He strips away all the mystical aura and breaks it down to pure logic. He is essentially saying to the masses, look, if you truly believe that the literal physical stone in the temple is the divine and you are throwing your hard-earned money at it, then scale up your logic.
Go find the biggest mountain and worship that, because surely more stone equals more God.
Exactly. But it's the second half of the quote that really hits hard. Better is a grinding stone.
Right, he pivots entirely to utility.
Yes. He says, if you want to look at the actual value of a piece of stone, look at the simple, unglamorous stone wheel used in a village to grind wheat into flour. That stone actually produces food. It feeds hungry people. It sustains life.
Therefore, that grinding stone is infinitely more valuable and arguably more divine in its utility than a decorated statue in a temple that does nothing but silently collect gold and currency from desperate people.
Kabir was desperately trying to rip humanity away from the physical transaction and point them back inward toward internal consciousness and actual human empathy.
But the tragedy is, on a macro level, humanity didn't listen to Kabir. We didn't listen to the Sufi saints. In fact, we doubled down on the transaction.
We absolutely did.
And this leads us to one of the most profound, uncomfortable realizations we have to face today. We have spent all this time talking about humans making idols out of stone, wood, or gold. But if you look at modern society, the absolute truest, most accurate physical manifestation of God that humans have ever created
is money.
Money is the ultimate universally agreed upon idol.
It really is when you break down the definition.
Think about the definition of an all-powerful deity. It controls your fate, it dictates your survival, it demands your time, and it punishes you if you ignore it.
Sounds exactly like modern capitalism.
Right. Money dictates human life from the exact moment you were born in a hospital, which costs money, to the moment you die and are buried, which also costs money. It is the invisible, omnipresent force that governs our waking hours.
And furthermore, money is the literal force that builds the grand temples, mosques, and churches to house the other secondary idols.
It is the God above the gods.
Exactly. And let's look at how we raise our children in this modern era. We claim to value truth, wisdom, and enlightenment. But why do we actually push our children into high-level education?
Why do we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on university degrees?
Right. We don't educate them primarily to seek ultimate truth or to become modern philosophers. We educate them so they can serve the ultimate idol of commerce.
We want them to secure a high-paying job, to amass more of this physical currency, to ensure a comfortable life.
It represents a seamless, almost invisible transition from spiritual worship to pure, unadulterated capitalism. Humanity took the profound ancient concept of the unmanifested energy of the divine, and we perfectly manifested it as currency.
We worship it, we sacrifice our time and our youth for it, we stress over it in the middle of the night, and we constantly pray for more of it.
Okay, so if we accept this reality, that humans have successfully hijacked the concept of the divine and turned it into this massive, self-serving, transactional corporate enterprise.
Which seems undeniable at this point.
Right. It brings up an absolutely incredible thought experiment from our notes. What would happen if the original founder of the enterprise showed up today?
Like, what if the original CEO, the true divine, actually returned to Earth?
This is where we have to look at one of the most brilliant pieces of world literature ever written. The Russian author, Fyodor Dostoevsky, explored this exact hypothetical in his masterpiece, The Brothers Karamazov.
Specifically in a chapter titled The Grand Inquisitor.
Yes, that exact chapter.
For those who haven't read it, the setup is just incredible. I want you to imagine this scenario. Let's say Jesus returns to Earth, not in some apocalyptic, sky-splitting event, but he just walks into a major city.
Right. Just appears.
He appears outside a massive... So later that evening, the cathedral is quiet. The head priest, the Inquisitor, goes down into the dungeon to speak to his prisoner. Jesus asks him, essentially, "Did you not recognize me?" And the priest replies, "I recognized you immediately. I know exactly who you are."
Which is chilling.
So Jesus asks the logical question, then why did you arrest me? Why didn't you tell the world the truth? And the priest's answer is one of the most profound monologues in literary history.
What's fascinating here is how the priest looks at the founder of his faith and says, "Centuries ago, you gave humanity freedom and they couldn't handle it. You put us priests out of a job with your radical truth.
But we fixed it."
Right. He says, "We fixed it, we took your name, and we built an empire of rules, transactions, and authority. The people are happy being told what to do."
And then he delivers the final blow. He says, "If I go out there tomorrow and tell them the truth, that you have returned, that our rules are meaningless, that they just need to love each other and be free, you will ruin our business all over again. You will destroy everything we have built.
The power structure will collapse. Our families will starve. So please, I am begging you, leave. Leave tonight in the darkness before I am forced to crucify you again tomorrow."
Leave before we crucify you again. I mean, it is such a heavy, dark concept to sit with. He admits that preserving the institution is more important than the actual truth of the divine.
And if you think about it, this isn't just a critique of one specific religion. It's a critique of how the world, right now, today, would react to ultimate truth.
Absolutely. If we connect this Dostoevsky narrative to the bigger picture of modern religious economics we just discussed, you have to look at the modern managers of religion.
The high priests, the megachurch pastors, the supreme clerics.
Right, the religious political leaders. They are sitting on top of sprawling billion-dollar empires. They have unfathomable political influence, immense wealth, and total authority over their followers.
So if the real, true divine energy were to manifest physically today and say, "Your methods are entirely wrong. I never made these arbitrary rules about who you can love or what you can eat. I don't want your lavish gold-plated temples, and I certainly don't want your money."
The very first people to violently attack the divine would be those religious leaders.
Precisely, because the truth is an immediate existential threat to their power structure. If God is free, the toll booth goes out of business.
They would be forced to deploy all of their PR machinery, their political power, and their influence to declare the real God a dangerous fraud, a heretic, or a demon, just to protect their own jobs and their societal standing.
And it goes even deeper than just protecting their financial assets. There is also a massive clash of definitions that would occur.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about how humans have spent thousands of years dividing the concept of God into very narrow, highly specific boxes based on geography, culture, language, and ancient rule books.
Ah, the tribalization of the divine. My God versus your God.
Exactly. The real, formless, universal energy, if it manifested, wouldn't fit into any of those human-made boxes. The real God wouldn't care about the specific, arbitrary boundaries of human nation states.
Right. God wouldn't care about the rigid divisions of human castes or the specific dietary laws written down by Bronze Age tribe.
And because the real God wouldn't perfectly match the highly specific anthropomorphic descriptions written in the various competing holy books, every single faction would look at him and say, "You don't match the description in our sacred text. You don't perform the specific rituals we invented. Therefore, you are a fake."
Every single religion would reject the ultimate truth simply because it doesn't align with their specific narrow version of the map. They love the map more than they love the destination.
But the critique doesn't stop at the institutions. It is easy to blame the powerful leaders. But the harder truth to swallow is that the average, everyday person wouldn't want the real God to return either.
This is a really tough pill to swallow. Why wouldn't the masses want God?
Because humans fundamentally deeply prefer the illusion of God. We don't want the harsh, blazing, unforgiving light of ultimate truth. We want a comforting, grandfatherly figure. We want a cosmic safety net.
You want someone to bail us out.
Yes. We want an entity who will magically forgive our terrible behavior, solve our self-inflicted problems, validate our selfish desires, and guarantee us a happy afterlife, all for the low price of a weekly prayer or a small donation.
Like we said earlier, we want the moneylender, we do not want the mirror.
Exactly. Imagine if the real God stood directly in front of you and acted as a flawless, true mirror. Imagine an entity showing you the brutal, unvarnished reality of your own karma.
Telling you that there are no magical shortcuts.
Right. That your donations to the church do not erase the cruelty you showed your neighbor. That you have to bear the full, agonizing weight of your own actions and decisions, and that true peace requires years of painful internal growth.
We would absolutely hate it. The human ego would shatter completely. We wouldn't be able to handle that level of accountability.
And we know this is true, because history absolutely proves it.
Right. Every single time a historical figure emerged who tried to act as that mirror.
Whenever people like Socrates in Greece, or Jesus in Jerusalem, or Mansur al-Hallaj in the Islamic world, or Kabir in India tried to cut through the transactional illusion and show society the ultimate, unvarnished truth of personal responsibility and internal divinity.
What did society do?
Society reacted with lethal violence. We poisoned Socrates. We crucified Jesus. We brutally executed Mansur. We persecuted Kabir.
We consistently kill the messenger because the message of ultimate truth threatens our comfortable, lazy illusions. We would rather murder the truth than change our behavior.
Which brings us to an even more impenetrable barrier. Let's imagine a scenario where the religious institutions reject the divine to protect their wealth, and the masses reject the divine because they fear the accountability of the mirror.
Okay.
In the modern era, there is a third force that would reject the divine, and they would do it with far more authority, arrogance, and societal backing than anyone else, the scientific community.
So, what does this all mean? This is where the conversation pivots from ancient history into the hyper-modern secular world. Let's play out a new thought experiment from the source material.
Serve it.
Let's say God realizes the religious institutions are a lost cause. So God decides to bypass the churches and the temples entirely. God returns today, and to prove his identity to a secular modern world, God decides to perform undeniable physical miracles in broad daylight. What happens?
It is a fascinating premise. In the ancient world, an inexplicable miracle might have sparked widespread awe and birthed an entirely new religion. But today, in the age of rationalism, it would just spark a peer-reviewed debunking.
Right. If God decides to walk on water across a massive lake in front of thousands of people holding smartphones, the crowd films it, the footage goes viral, what does the modern, highly educated scientific community say?
They certainly don't fall to their knees in spiritual awe.
No. They invite a physicist onto a news panel who pulls out a tablet and confidently declares, clearly this is a hoax. This individual is likely wearing specially designed boots coated in an advanced, highly experimental hydrophobic nanomaterial that manipulated the surface tension of the water.
Or if God decides to demonstrate power by levitating, hovering 10 feet in the air above a city square, the scientific community wouldn't call it a miracle. They would instantly label it an elaborate stunt.
Oh, for sure.
They would theorize the use of hidden magnetic fields or undisclosed quantum levitation technology, or they would simply dismiss the entire event as a sophisticated holographic projection or an AI-generated mass hallucination.
It is brilliant, but it's deeply cynical. We have built a psychological and intellectual fortress out of our own ego and our constant cynical doubt. We have reached a point where God is entirely, utterly helpless against human cunning.
We really have.
We have become so educated, so rational, so devoted to the scientific method that we assume we have, or will eventually have, a mechanical explanation for everything in the universe.
Therefore, by default, any true miracle performed by a genuine divine entity would simply be categorized as advanced technology we don't understand yet, an optical illusion, or a masterclass in magic and deception. This raises a profoundly important philosophical question about the nature of truth versus our desperate desire for shortcuts. The central paradox we are circling is that truth, by its very nature, is difficult. It offers zero shortcuts.
None.
The path of ultimate truth requires facing your own karma, engaging in relentless self-reflection, dismantling your ego, and taking absolute responsibility for your existence. But humans are deeply afflicted by what ancient Eastern philosophy calls Maya.
Maya, the illusion of the material world.
Yes, Maya is the illusion that material wealth, status, and physical comfort are the ultimate realities of existence. Because we are diseased by this illusion and fundamentally driven by the greed it generates, we are desperate for shortcuts.
We don't want to hike the mountain. We want a helicopter to drop us at the summit.
We want the cheat codes to life. We want the hack that makes us rich, healthy, and happy without doing any of the actual work.
Exactly. And because our brains are wired to crave those cheat codes, we will eagerly, almost joyfully, embrace a fraudster, a trickster, or a charismatic scammer who promises us overnight wealth, instant enlightenment, or an easy solution to our complex problems.
We accept the lie because the lie is tailored specifically to promise what our ego wants to hear. But the truth promises hard work, pain, and accountability. So the truth is immediately and aggressively rejected.
The ultimate irony here, like the grand cosmic punchline of human existence, is that God, or the universe, or whatever you want to call the first cause, gave humans free will and highly evolved intellect. That was the supreme gift.
And what did humanity do with that supreme gift of intellect?
We used it to permanently board up every single door and window, ensuring the divine could never return and disrupt our lives. We used our intelligence to build arguments, economies, and scientific theories that perfectly insulate us from ultimate truth.
We became so incredibly clever that we outsmarted our own spiritual evolution. As the philosophers say in the notes, truth cannot prove itself by shouting.
Right. If the truth has to scream and perform parlor tricks to be heard over the deafening noise of human ego, it will simply choose to remain silent.
We locked the divine out of the world using the very intellect that the divine supposedly bestowed upon us. It is a stunning, tragic, philosophical conclusion. We built a labyrinth so complex that we trapped ourselves inside it.
Which brings us to the absolute climax of our journey today. This is where we take all of this high-level theology, this ancient philosophy about idols and truth, and we slam it directly into the harsh reality of the modern digital age.
This is where it gets really uncomfortable.
It really does. We have firmly established that the human intellect is arrogant enough and robust enough to confidently disprove the existence of God. But here is where the story gets deeply, uncomfortably real for you, the modern listener. That exact same intellectual arrogance, that exact same fortress of rationality, is precisely what makes modern, highly educated humans the most gullible, easily manipulated victims of modern crime.
We are transitioning from philosophical blindness to practical financial blindness. It is the paradox of what we might call intellectual blindness, or, as some social critics provocatively term it, developed stupidity.
Developed stupidity. I love that term. Let's paint a picture of the modern, tech-savvy target. I'm not talking about someone who struggles with technology. I am talking about the hyper-rational scientist, the highly educated federal judge, the brilliant university professor, or the tech CEO.
These are individuals who have spent decades aggressively honing their minds. They were the absolute peak of our vaunted educational system.
Right. They can sit in a lecture hall and effortlessly, logically deconstruct complex philosophical arguments. They understand quantum mechanics or intricate constitutional legal frameworks or advanced economics. Their brains are finely tuned analytical machines.
They are the very people we look to as the arbiters of truth and rationality in our society.
Exactly. And yet, these exact same titans of modern intellect, these people who demand peer-reviewed evidence for everything, are regularly getting utterly duped, scammed, and entirely financially ruined by a 15 or 16-year-old kid with a 5th grade education.
Sitting in an internet cafe in a remote village halfway across the world.
Using nothing but a cheap smartphone, a Wi-Fi connection, some basic cyber fraud tactics, and maybe some rudimentary AI voice cloning software.
How is that possible, right? If we connect this jarring reality to the bigger picture of human progress, we are forced to confront a fundamental, highly dangerous confusion in modern society. We have completely blurred the lines between two very different concepts, information and wisdom.
They are not the same thing.
Not at all. Our modern world has made a fatal error. We mistake technological proficiency, academic credentials, and the sheer accumulation of data for actual deep-rooted human intelligence.
The distinction is vital. The notes we are exploring are ruthless about this exact point. Just because you have a PhD, or just because you own a $2,000 smartphone, or the most advanced computer on the market, that does not make you fundamentally wise.
It does not mean you understand human nature.
No. It just means you have purchased an expensive ticket into a hyper-complex, digitized maze, and you have absolutely no idea where the exit is, or who else is wandering in the dark with you.
The technology, the degrees, the status, they all combine to give the modern intellectual a profound illusion of control. But in reality, that illusion creates a massive, easily exploitable vulnerability.
So I really want to slow down and break down the psychology of this developed stupidity. Explain the mechanism to me. How does a brilliant scientist, someone whose literal job is to be skeptical and demand proof, actually get scammed by a teenager? How does the scammer bypass that massive intellect?
It happens because the educated victim suffers from a very specific psychological blind spot, which we can call the ego of knowledge.
The ego trap.
Exactly. Let's walk through the hypothetical moment it happens. The scientist receives a phone call or an urgent message. Perhaps it's a deepfake audio of their child screaming for help, or a highly official-looking message claiming their bank accounts are tied to a federal money laundering investigation and they're about to be arrested.
Terrifying stuff.
Right. Now, the scientist's conscious brain, the logical part, thinks, I am a rational person. I understand physics. I understand the intricate laws of the universe. I possess a doctorate. Therefore, I am far too smart to be fooled by a common scam.
They fundamentally believe that their academic intelligence acts as an invincible, impenetrable shield against deception. They think their IQ protects them.
But the teenage scammer in that remote village, he doesn't know anything about physics. He couldn't pass a basic college entrance exam. He doesn't care about the Big Bang or the first cause or quantum mechanics.
No.
But he knows something far more dangerous and far more primal. He knows human psychology. He knows exactly how human greed works. And he knows exactly how human fear works.
And that is the key, isn't it? The scammer isn't attacking the scientist's prefrontal cortex, the logical, analytical part of the brain where their knowledge of physics lives. The scammer is attacking the amygdala.
They are triggering the primal evolutionary fear response.
They are pushing the exact psychological buttons that bypass the intellect entirely and strike directly at raw emotion. They bypass the firewall of the intellect by triggering a panic attack.
Yes. The scammer creates an artificial state of extreme urgency. Send the money right now or your child goes to jail. Transfer the funds to the safe account immediately or the FBI will freeze your assets.
And they don't give you a second to think.
No, the scammer isn't debating the scientist's knowledge. He is manipulating the scientist's hidden primal fear of authority, or perhaps their hidden greed for a massive, unearned financial return. And because the scientist is completely blinded by their own ego of knowledge, because they are so convinced that they are too smart to be tricked, they never even step back to question the premise of the attack.
Their logical brain shuts down, their primal fear takes over, and they comply.
They never even see the deception until the phone goes dead and their bank account is completely drained.
This perfectly highlights the true nature of science and technology. We like to think of science as an inherent good, a guiding light. But science is completely fundamentally neutral. It has no inherent morality.
It's the scientification of crime.
Exactly. As science and technology advance, they give the modern intellectual the logical framework and the tools to confidently map the human genome, build rockets, and proudly disprove the existence of God. But simultaneously, at the exact same moment, that exact same scientific advancement gives the criminal the precise tools, the AI, the deepfakes, the anonymous routing, the cryptocurrency ledgers, to steal a person's entire life savings from thousands of miles away, completely anonymously, without ever once showing their face.
As human intellect scales, human crime scales right alongside it, matching it step for step. We didn't leave our primal nature behind, we just digitized it.
We armed our greed with supercomputers.
We really did.
But this brings up a massive, glaring question. If this is truly happening, and we know from cybersecurity statistics that it absolutely is, if these brilliant judges, powerful politicians, and genius scientists are regularly being financially ruined by teenagers using basic psychological tricks, why don't we hear about it more often?
That's a great point.
Why aren't these specific cases front page news every single day? Why aren't there massive public warnings with their names attached?
This is where we uncover the darkest, most cynical, and perhaps saddest truth about our highly educated elite. It all comes down to the paralyzing fear for their intellectual reputation.
Think about the contrast. If an uneducated person, say a day laborer or someone with very little formal schooling, gets robbed on the street or tricked out of $100, what do?
They scream. They cry out for help.
Right. They run immediately to the nearest police station. They tell their neighbors. They tell their family. Why? Because they want their hard-earned money back, and they have no massive intellectual ego to protect. They don't care if people think they were foolish. They just want justice.
They are unburdened by the vanity of intelligence. But the brilliant scientist, the high-ranking politician, the respected federal judge. Imagine the psychological devastation when they finally hang up the phone, look at their zeroed-out bank balance, and realize they have been completely, thoroughly played by a 15-year-old kid.
A paralyzing, suffocating fear sets in. But it is not just the fear of losing their retirement fund, it is the absolute terror of public humiliation.
So they stay completely silent. They eat the massive financial loss. They hide it from their spouses, they hide it from their colleagues, and they certainly hide it from the police.
Because they simply cannot bear the thought of society, their academic peers, and the media looking at them and asking the most devastating, ego-destroying question imaginable. You hold 3 advanced degrees. You are a federal judge. You are supposed to be so incredibly smart. How on earth did you fall for something so remarkably stupid?
The shame of being publicly exposed as a developed fool vastly outweighs the pain of the financial ruin. Their entire identity is built on being the smartest person in the room. Admitting they were scammed destroys that identity.
And the scammers, the syndicates running these operations, they know this.
This is the absolute genius of the modern cybercriminal. They specifically and intentionally target the educated elites, the doctors, the lawyers, the academics, not just because that is where the deep pockets are, but because the educated elite is the safest possible target in the world.
Because the criminal knows with absolute certainty that their victim's own massive ego will act as a secondary accomplice. The victim's shame will enforce a wall of silence, effectively protecting the scammer from any police investigation.
It is the ultimate checkmate. The human intellect, so proud, so rational, so arrogant, ultimately builds a trap for itself, locks itself inside, and swallows the key out of pure embarrassment.
We have spent an hour unpacking a really profound, twisting, and sometimes uncomfortable journey based on these philosophical notes. Let's trace the arc of what we've actually explored today because it paints a fascinating picture of who we are.
Let's do it.
We started at the dawn of consciousness with ancient humanity, staring up at the night sky, terrified, trying to comprehend an infinite formless energy. To cope with that cognitive overload, we projected our own human faces, our own hands onto the divine. We built idols and maps to help us navigate the unknown.
But then, driven by our inherent biological fears and our insatiable greed, we took those meditative idols and turned them into a massive transactional marketplace. We downgraded spiritual evolution into a business deal. I give you this, you give me that, ultimately crowning money as the true, universally worshipped idol that dictates every waking moment of our lives.
From there, we explored Dostoevsky's terrifying thought experiment. We realized that if the real divine, the original founder of truth, ever did return, we would immediately lock him out. The institutions would reject him with violence to protect their wealth and power, and the everyday masses would reject him because we vastly prefer a comfortable, transactional illusion over the harsh, demanding reality of ultimate truth and personal karma.
And then we armed ourselves with science. We built an impenetrable, steel-reinforced fortress of rationality and cynical doubt. ensuring that any genuine miracle would just be arrogantly debunked as a magic trick or advanced technology. We used our massive intellect to proudly and permanently outsmart our own spiritual potential.
Which brings us to the final, crushing irony of the human condition. The modern intellectual sits safely inside their fortress, surrounded by cutting-edge technology, completely and utterly convinced of their own supreme intelligence. Yet, they are fundamentally, tragically unaware of their own internal vulnerabilities.
They have mastered the external world. They can launch satellites into orbit. They can cure diseases. They can split the atom. But they cannot manage their own internal greed or their own primal fear. And so, despite all their degrees in technology, they're left completely defenseless against a teenager with a Wi-Fi connection who simply understands how to manipulate basic human nature.
It is a devastating, crystal clear portrait of exactly where we are today as a species. We are technically literate, we are drowning in data and information, but internally we are completely unaware and immature.
We really are.
We've spent this entire deep dive exploring the massive tension between what we technically know and how we actually psychologically behave when the pressure is on. And as we wrap up this journey, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering question. Something to really mull over as you go about your day, as you look at your smartphone, or as you think about your career and your children's futures. Think about everything we have discussed regarding the ego of knowledge and the profound blindness it creates.
It's a lot to process.
It is. If our advanced, highly prized education system and our incredible cutting-edge technology are the exact things that made us blind, if they blind us to spiritual truth on one hand, by making us too arrogant to accept it, and they blind us to basic fundamental deception on the other, by making us too confident to see a scam coming, what is the real purpose of this education we spend our entire lives and hundreds of thousands of dollars pursuing?
That's the million-dollar question.
Are we actually studying, reading, and learning to become wiser, more grounded human beings? Or are we just paying massive amounts of money to become much more sophisticated, highly trained, and ultimately defenseless targets?
A question that truly demands some uncomfortable but deeply necessary self-reflection.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an incredible journey unpacking this with you. We will catch you on the next one.